They say once you go dark, you don't go back. That remains true for me. I am Lady Isra, the most ferocious villain in the land, or so I hear. The people say a lot about me. They say I am heartless, cold, and wicked. But they don't know what made me this way. I lost love, becoming trapped in the throes of darkness. I'm isolated in this world. I've taken the power of a dragon. I've cast spells upon myself so that only those who possess the ability of magic can feast their eyes upon me. But now I've met him, this magnificent being. He's a raven. I can't help but admire him. Astrid, now what a handsome fellow. I don't know where he will take me, but I'm curious to step into his claws. A witch drawn to the dark world that's only going to go darker. A tale of magic and romance. Perfect for fans of fairy tales and Disney. Her Dark Soul is the first book in the Dark Spell series by Isra Sravenheart. It's basically follows a witch, Lady Isra, who is gone dark and evil and whatnot, and her journey further down the rabbit hole, I suppose. This book is told very much like your traditional fairy tales. You know, once upon a time there was a witch who went dark, and she went into the forest one day and did X, and then the next day did Y, and so it's very much that sort of a style of writing, which is a perfectly valid style. It's not my favorite. I find it a very difficult thing to read simply because there's so much detail that kind of gets lost. This is why I like reading fairy tale retellings as opposed to the original fairy tales, because the original fairy tales are like, things happened, whereas the retelling was, okay, here's what happened. So there's nothing wrong with this style at all. It is very valid. It is absolutely a thing that people read and love. Not my favorite, but that's just an opinion. So as far as the story itself goes, the plot is fairly straightforward. She is going further down the rabbit hole. She finds people who are trying to stop her, and things progress thusly. There's not a lot of detail, like I explained earlier, which isn't necessarily a problem. I think you understand the story fairly well. It's a fairly easy thing to follow. I will say it does repeat itself a lot. Her soul was wicked. She was wicked. She was doing wicked things. That's literally the most used adjective in the book. Again, very much in line with that fairy tale style. It repeats itself, and there were certain events, you know, this person did X, and then from a different perspective, they know this person did X, and that sort of a thing, which I didn't think was entirely necessary. But since I do not often read stories of this sort, I don't know if that's a common style thing, or if it was unique to this story. I can't tell you that one way or another. The bit with Astrid, which was mentioned in the blurb, I will say that kind of came out of nowhere. Again, this is the fairy tale thing. It just, characters can appear out of nowhere without a backstory. And I think that's the biggest thing that was bothering me about this book, was there was no backstory. I mean, it vaguely mentioned backstory with Isra, and why she was the way she was, but only in like the most vague terms, as in something happened that made me this way, that sort of a thing. And I can't sympathize with a villain who is so very villainous unless I know why they are that way, and the story did not do that. And it didn't explain why Astrid was there, or what his deal was either. And I mean, I like the idea. I really do. I love stories from villains' perspectives. They're often some of the most interesting characters I find, just because they are so... There has to be something that set them off down this path. And if they acknowledge that they are dark and villainous and whatnot, then that is very interesting indeed. And this definitely had the potential to be extremely interesting. I was very curious. But the style, I think, with that lack of detail that is very indicative of original fairy tale, Grimm's Brothers sort of a thing, it just threw me off. It's not to say it was a bad story. It was definitely not at all. It just felt very much like the original fairy tales, as opposed to a retelling, which is absolutely a personal preference thing. So if you do like the original fairy tales, absolutely read this book. It is fascinating in that regard. It does very well in mimicking that style and sort of creating that atmosphere that you expect from those stories. And I think there are several books in this series. I don't remember how many, but there are several. 5, 6? I don't remember. You'll have to look in the description box where I put all my links. Ha ha ha, segues. Or perhaps non sequiturs. I'll leave that up to you to decide which it is. Anyways, the links are there, as are mine, if you're interested. I'm spinning the wrong direction to show you my fantasy books, but there's, you know, a whole pile of... here we go. Plus, I'm spinning. This is weird. Sometimes I hate filming and just being here. All of these books I'm very excited about. Also, romance and fantasy romance, and then epic fantasy and sci-fi and standalones and stuff. So yeah. Anyways, that's pretty much all I've got for you this week. As I said, if you like fairy tales, this is a book to check out. Original fairy tales. This is definitely a book to check out. And go cause some trouble, go read a book, and I shall see you next time. Bye.